So this is going to be a foot slash ankle warm-up or prehab routine that you can use to strengthen your ankle and feet, as well as reduce some pain that you might have in that ankle or foot area. So we're going to start this routine by rolling out our feet. The reason why we're starting with the feet is that if you have ankle pain, a lot of that could be caused by actually having tight or weak feet, and this could be because you're doing too much in your shoes. You're not actually strengthening your feet but just by doing normal lower body movements with your shoes off, so that the intrinsic muscles of your foot can learn how to create that stability that it actually needs instead of relying on your shoes. So if you have tight and weak feet, that can actually work up the chain to your ankle and cause problems there. So by rolling out our feet, we're going to acutely reduce some pain that might be in that area so we can actually train through and create some more permanent tissue adaptation. So the next spot that we're going to be working on is our calves and Achilles area. So this is also another very commonly tight area because of our shoe wearing. A lot of our shoes have an elevated heel, and if you think about it, having an elevated heel for basically everything that you do, walking, standing, that's going to actually elevate the heel above the toes and in turn shorten up the Achilles tendon and calf muscles, since they're going to be kind of permanently in a minor level of contraction. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why we might have reduced ankle mobility, is because our calves and our Achilles are too tight and they're not letting that knee go forward as forward as it can over the toes. So as you can see, I'm rolling up and down on a lacrosse ball on my calves, and then I'm crossing that other leg over in order to increase the amount of pressure that I have on the area, and then I'm actually going to be moving my foot up and down while I'm on a tender spot in order to reduce that tension that's in that area. So the last area that I'm going to be rolling out or performing some self-myofascial release on is my tibialis anterior. So as you can see, I'm kind of on the front of my shin. Now I'm not directly on my shin bone. I'm kind of on the meaty portion on the outside, right on my shin bone. So that's where your tibialis anterior runs. Kind of starts all the way almost up by your knee and then runs down through your ankle. Well, that's a very common area for shin splints, and shin splints could possibly be caused by actually having a weak tibialis anterior muscle. So while this is not going to really be strengthening that muscle, we're going to get to that a little bit later, this does again acutely reduce some pain that is in that area, and it could allow you to strength train through a greater range of motion and maybe a little bit heavier to create more permanent tissue adaptations in that tibialis anterior, which over time can help support that structure and reduce the pain that you would be having with either ankle sprains or shin splints. So that tibialis anterior is an often forgotten part that you need to work on. The next move that we're going to be doing is a banded ankle distraction. So as you can see, I have the band right around the crease of my ankle, okay? And then the band a little bit lower than where my foot is. That's where my foot is elevated on a box. So that band is pulling that ankle back and down and kind of distracting that joint back. And then I'm pushing that knee as far forward as I can with keeping my foot flat on the box. And then I'm just going to kind of sit there, and I'm going to kind of work into the corners that I feel are tight and kind of sit there for a little bit, spend a little bit of time in those tight areas in order for them to loosen up. Now, some of the benefits of this drill is, while it will stretch out the back of the calf a little bit too, we're actually going to get to that a little bit later in the next drill, but what it's doing is that band is pulling a couple of your bones back into alignment. So if you look at your lower leg, you have your shin bone, which is called your tibia, and then it sits right on your main ankle bone, which is called your talus bone, okay? Well, if you're somebody who's had very commonly sprained your ankle, or maybe even just had one or two really bad strains, you have a bunch of tendons and ligaments in your ankle that kind of keep those bones in place. Well, when you sprain your ankle, that actually loosens up those tendons and ligaments and allows a little bit more motion in those bones to happen than what is preferred or needed. So that's not necessarily a great thing because that could reduce your overall ankle range of motion. What happens is that talus bone, so your main ankle bone, will slide forward, and then it won't allow that knee to go as far forward over the toe, because when that tibia goes forward, it's actually going to kind of ram into that talus bone earlier than it should, or than it needs to. So what this is doing is this is distracting that talus bone. It's pulling it kind of back into place and really allowing you to increase that ankle range of motion by restoring that proper joint function that you might have lost due to some ankle sprains and ankle injuries. And in turn, restoring proper ankle range of motion can also help all the way up to your knees and hips and back. So the next part or drill that we're going to be doing here is a calf stretch. I have my foot elevated right on the slant board there. I'm trying to lock that leg out and trying to stretch and go continue to push my hips forward, so I feel a big stretch in that calf and all the way up into my hamstrings just a little bit as well, all the way down from my Achilles up to my hamstrings. So we already worked on our soft tissue quality a little bit by rolling out. We're starting to just push that a little bit further by stretching into a little bit farther range of motion now to help that tissue, the health of those tissues in that area. This stretching is going to help reduce any sort of tightness that you might feel in that Achilles, in that calf, in those calf muscles. And again, what this is going to let you do is it's going to kind of down regulate the tone, the resting tone of those muscles for an acute period of time, which could then allow you to strength train through a greater range of motion, which will allow you to create more permanent tissue adaptations in the future, which over time will actually help you permanently reduce pain. So next we're going to be going to a more active mobility drill in the warm-up section. What we're going to be doing is an ankle CAR, okay? So CAR stands for Controlled Articulate Rotation, which basically all it means is that we're going to be moving that joint through a full range of motion in a circular motion. So as you can see, I'm holding my foot up just so I don't really get any motion from my knee, and so I'm not wiggling around. The only place that I'm really moving at is through my ankle, okay? Because that's the spot that I'm currently focusing on. So I'm trying to basically draw a circle with my toes as big as I can and going nice and slow and controlled throughout that whole range of motion. This is going to help start to get some blood into that, into the ankle joint, into the muscles and tendons and ligaments that surround that joint and support that joint. And what it's really going to do too is it's going to help you start to work different ranges of motion that you might not work through normal strength training. There's not a lot of strength training movements where you actually go in a full circle with any of your joints. And what this is going to let you do is going to help you strengthen the areas of those joints that the joint is meant to go through that you might not necessarily hit with normal strength training. Now, with that being said, it is a low intensity movement, so it's not going to provide a great strength training benefit other than at the beginning when you first start to do it, but it'll still help a little bit. After that, it's just a great warm-up drill to get a lot of blood into those ankles and help that healing process, which happens when you get blood flow into an area. Now, when this says 10 reps each side, also you're going to be doing 10 reps in each direction. Again, so you start to work both directions of that ankle movement. This next move is going to be a band-resisted eversion and inversion of the ankle. So you can see that I have my foot in the band and then I kind of wrapped it around one direction. I'm going to be going the other direction next to, wrapping it around the other way. But what I'm doing is I'm currently pulling that ankle into inversion, okay? And then I'm resisting actively in eversion, okay? So basically, inversion is when you take your ankle and kind of lift the medial side or the inside portion of your foot up, and then eversion is when you do the opposite. You try to lift the outside portion of your foot up off the floor if you're standing there. So what this is doing is this is adding a little bit more resistance to the little muscles in your foot and ankle and calf that help you move the foot in each one of these directions. Okay, with the band, I can be pulling on the band as much as I want, or I can also be increasing the thickness of the band in order to provide a little bit more resistance in order to actually start to strengthen those, which happens through increasing resistance and that principle of progressive overload over time. Again, with that being said, this is not necessarily something that you're going to be going super heavy on. It's something that you're going to be using for a more endurance stimulus. Again, it's something that you're going to be using to increase the amount of blood flow into the area, work the little muscles that help support the ankle and foot. So you're going to be going for more higher reps as opposed to, again, trying to really, really crank up the amount of weight, quote unquote, that you're going to be using for this movement. This is a movement that I saw from Donnie Thompson. He really has focused on ankle and foot support, since that's the base of basically all athletic movements. Whether you're a strength athlete, field athlete, doesn't really matter. If you need to produce force, you need to make sure that you have strong feet or and strong ankles, because that's going to lead to problems up the chain if you don't. So again, this is just a way to kind of strengthen the ankles in ways that and in planes of motion that you don't normally get through normal strength training. And after you get used to it, will be a great warm-up before any of your sprints or lower body exercise or lower body movements that you might be doing, or maybe sport practices that you might be doing in order to warm up that ankle area. So the last exercise that we're going to be doing here is a banded ankle dorsiflexion. So dorsiflexion is when you move your ankle and you point it up towards your nose, okay, like you can see me doing there. You can see that the band is wrapped around my foot again, wrapped around the rack, and then it's crossed over my toes so that the band doesn't go anywhere. I'm trying to make sure that I keep my knee locked out, and the only range of motion that I'm getting is through my ankle there. So what this is doing is it's working the tibialis anterior muscle. This is a muscle that runs all the way down your shin like we worked on before, and now we're starting to strengthen it and not just work on the tissue quality. Well, a stronger tibialis anterior can reduce things like knee problems, shin splints, or ankle problems, because that provides that ankle more support. It's never good to be weak in an area, so we want to make sure that all of our areas are worked and strong. This is a great introductory exercise to start to work this area, because you can be doing it for high reps, but it's a pretty low intensity. So what that's going to do is it's going to get a lot of blood flow into the area, which especially initially is going to strengthen the area by itself. But also, since it's not an extremely intense stimulus, you can do more reps, which will help, again, get more blood, but you'll also be able to recover from it a little bit easier. So especially when you're first starting to work out or first starting to work a specific muscle, don't necessarily go for super intense exercises. Go for lower intensity and higher reps.